So I was saying to you, I was recording a show before with Joe Fontana, somebody who Amy also introduced me to, and we went on the first 15 minutes without recording a word
Oh
of what we
no.
said. And the whole conversation, the first 15 minutes was amazing. It had like viral potential because we went a bit political. But
Mm,
then, and now we were talking, and I realized, crap, I'm doing the same thing with her. We better start recording and just pick it up from where we were and record the conversation.
yeah, and see where it goes. And see where it goes. And I am going to do one thing. There we go. Okay.
Are you uh are you muting notifications? Because I just did that too.
Yes, that's what I did.
So how are you?
Yeah. I'm doing pretty good. It's spring break right now. So here's my disclaimer. I have two dogs, two cats, and two kids, and they are all currently in my home. So
Well, we might have other guests joining us. That's pretty
we
cool.
might. We might. Yes, they are all food motivated. So they have been sequestered into a different part of the house via snacks. So we'll see how long that keeps them
That's
over there.
also the best way to motivate me and distract me, even though I'm not a kid, a cat, or a dog.
Yeah.
So yeah, I relate. But yes, listen, spring break, wonderful season, time to
Yeah.
relax, and maybe we will have extra guests. I mean, in the show before with Joe, we had the his cat, a girl. She came in, appeared, she graced us for a moment with
Yes.
her presence, and then she just went away. Unlike my cat, who could care less about what I'm doing the whole day. So you know how they are.
Yeah. Yeah. My little chihuahua is everyone's favorite cameo. So we'll see.
Maybe we'll get him.
Yeah.
Listen, Chelsea, for the people who don't know her, this is Chelsea Burns. She is the marketing psychologist. And something that I really want to emphasize, she has a wonderful mission that's stated up there on her LinkedIn profile. She wants to recenter business around humanity. And now that's exactly the starting point. I want as the official starting point of this conversation, like the formal thing. Um, why is your mission recentering business around humanity?
That is a really good question. So I'm going to go a little bit deep because there's no other way to answer this. I started a personal therapy journey a little over 10 years ago. And obviously to overcome very personal type things, but I've always been a career in-house marketer. And what happened was I started showing up to work, learning more about my own brain and how I function as a human being, and going, hello, we should be using a lot of this in our marketing. And marketing psychology is not new. I am not the first person to talk about this. But as I learned more about the human brain and as I continued on my marketing career, the thing that rubbed me the wrong way was manipulation in marketing. And so now, as an entrepreneur and someone who gets to define my own mission and what I really want, I also understand that we all are aspiring to achieve something well beyond usually ourselves and usually well beyond our current place in life. And what I settled on was that I want to feel like a human being in what is arguably, a capitalist society in every way you turn. And some of that is really being torn down, and humanity is being dismantled in a lot of ways through marketing. And so, really, it was like, okay, if I can do one thing through my services, yes, I can help you make money and convert more leads and all the marketing speak. But I really want to help businesses treat people like human beings.
It's how there is this, this distinction in the hacker world between black hat hackers and white hat hackers. I
Mm.
see the same in marketers and business people. I'm sorry. So, when did you start notice what was the prime example of marketing manipulation that made it click for you? If there was any one prime example of it.
Mm. I'm going to tread lightly here. I had a personal work experience where I worked for a company that was using psychology in a lot of ways. And actually, my master's degree in applied psychology is one of the reasons that I landed that role. And on the outside looking in, it should have been the perfect thing. It was a VP level role, six plus figures. I had just turned 30, like, oh my gosh, you're accomplishing all the things. And the thing that I learned was this is not how I want to do business. Um, there was no follow through, like to me, it becomes manipulation if you're promising things and you're doing things and you're offering this, but there's no follow through on it. And there's no holding of space for, um, real value and real change on the other side of that. When it gets stripped down to the dollar is when I get real uncomfy about it. And so that was really that turning point for me. There's more to life than money. Money is not the number one currency as far as I am concerned. And I can't help but think that there's more people out there who feel that way.
I think there is, and even those who aren't should be smart enough to understand that the real currency of business is trust. And I completely align with you in making business more human, especially now that AI is in the way, right? We saw it happen with Klarna. They say we were gonna fire almost everybody and just use AI, and then a few weeks later, the CEO backtracked with a ham-fisted attempt at PR managing and perception management that it was a disaster, and it proved that it's too early, and to some extent, I don't think you can replace humans in business. Business is one of the most human things ever because it's commerce, it's exchanging value, it's solving problems. And there is a lot to be said about how, when you don't manipulate people and you run proper business based on trust, your customer lifetime value extends. So there is a financial upside to being ethical, right?
Absolutely. Well, and this is where, and I just did a post and I used the word fluffy because as I first tried to really bring a lot of these psychological principles into marketing in the roles in which I was currently in, that pushback was like, oh, this is too fluffy, right? Like it's too intangible, it's too soft. And it's like, no. There is really firm research that shows like trust increases profitability. An emotionally engaged, consumer spends X percentage more over the lifetime, of their relationship with your brand. Like, this is not fluffy stuff. This is science that is connected to hard data.
And to your point, it's not just not fluffy, it's also universal to business because some people will hear this and say, oh, well, we are in B2B. We deal with logical buyers, which again, it's it's a degree of naivete and delusion that I find cute.
Yeah.
But even in B2B, perhaps it's even more important in B2B because nobody else is doing it. You need to be engaging your customers emotionally. And that's
Hmm.
one of the cornerstones of also the side of my business that is sales training is sell in a way that helps you connect with the person in front of you, that helps you gain their trust and gain the trust of those around them. Because that way, sales becomes part of the customer experience. Because sales is another area where we are full of bad actors and old school methods that were basically either pressure tactics or manipulation to get you to buy.
Yeah. Well, and let's just pause for a second and talk about how the term logical buyer is the biggest oxymoron in the world, especially in B2B. I mean, when you're in B2B, there is the weight of the world on a lot of those decision makers. They're not making logical decisions. They're making emotional decisions, like the rest of us, I will add, but arguably more from a place of fear and anxiety and, desperation in some cases. And so anytime I hear the word logical buyer, I just have to stop and be like, okay, we got to debunk that real fast, which I know is your point, but yeah, so true.
I love it. This makes me so happy because it's hilarious. I've been close to executives. I seen, probably the most stereotypical logical buyer is, and the epitome of that figure, that fictional creature is a CFO, a
Mm,
finance guy that only runs numbers and only looks at spreadsheets. I saw a CFO rubbing their face before a meeting with the board in complete frustration because he didn't know what to tell them or how to communicate the bad news properly.
hmm
That's not a logical buyer. If I had walked into that room with a solution that he could implement 2 minutes before that call, he would have paid me 3 monthly salaries of his to fix that problem. That's how stressed that man looked.
Mm-hmm.
It's hilarious to think that there are logical bias because, especially, you've seen this, CMOs, B2B. CMOs are under such pressure. Their teams are seen as these like creative people that push slide decks and make nice events and design merchandising. Their jobs are on the line every time they make a bad decision, or at least that's how they feel it. That's
Yep.
not a logical buyer. They can be because their job is on the line.
Yep. Well, and this is why, like, when picking, a target audience, even for myself, right? Marketing psychology is this huge umbrella, and it's like it could serve all sorts of people. But the people who I think need it most are these higher level executives, right? In a lot of these companies, but also the in-house marketers, the people who are having to make these decisions. There is so much that weighs on them, and they need to be able to anchor this in real sustainable results because sure, you can get a quick win from using something gimmicky, but you're looking at a return on investment over time. And these people work in corporate and they want their career there for a while. They're not making a short-sighted, short-term decision. And to your point about the CFO, what was surfacing for me was I was getting flashbacks of all these times where, I was the marketing executive, the head of marketing for these companies, running a variety of sized budgets. Some of them were very small, some of them were pretty hefty. But the way that higher level executives will swoop in and say, okay, but yeah, we're going to drop 100K on a new website, right? And you're going, this is, oh, I'm sorry, what? Because it's from a place of fear, right? They talked to some business development person somewhere who nailed their insecurity and, right? And got them to think this $100,000 website was going to be the thing. And let me tell you, I have never once been a part of a 100K website launch that fixed company problems.
Wow, I love that you're bringing this up because now I need to tread lightly, right? B2B tech company, I was there in some role some years ago. Let's keep it like that. They paid this, let's not super specify where from in Europe, agency,
Mm-hmm.
and the agency was presented to me as by the VP of marketing. She goes, "This is the Apple of web design in Europe," and I go, "Damn, all the red lights." Because I already know the Apple of web design in Europe is like the trashiest positioning ever. Okay, let's say that is their reputation because they're really good. And your story just made me realize that there was a connection there with sales. Somebody sold to our marketing team and our CEOs in that organization a 100K website,
Mm-hmm.
exactly 100K for a company with at the time maybe 200 employees.
Yep.
So there is all this hype. We meet with these people. Their customer journey was awful. They didn't listen to one suggestion that came from inside the company. They wanted to do things their way. They did end up doing things their way. Even in spite of that, they delayed the process by 3 months and they blamed the client. Then they delayed by 6 months and they laid the client. The website ended up getting delivered almost a year later with massive delay. Nobody was happy about it. And a lawsuit that ended up in the company still having to pay 30K, but at least reducing that ticket, right?
Yeah.
And the end result had repercussions because after it was done, they were left with this WordPress website that costed 100K. That since it was made taking into consideration internal stakeholders, never the prospects or the customers.
Mm-hmm.
And that website, I think, costed that company millions in deals because prospects log in, look at the whole thing written there, and not understand a word of what they were doing. And that's a perfect
Mm-hmm.
example. Sometimes a website worth 100K doesn't just not fix the issue, it also just makes things way worse.
Yep. Yep. Well, and that's the thing, because again, what's coming up for me is that most of these, this has happened multiple times, right? And for each of those companies, they didn't even know who, not necessarily, sometimes they knew who they were talking to, but they couldn't even accurately articulate within their company what problem they solved and why they did it better than other people. And as a matter of fact, in multiple meetings, we're asked the question by me, okay, what is it we're solving for people? And why are we the best decision? I kid you not. I've been given multiple times a response that was like, well, I'm sure someone can probably do the same job that we can.
You get it all the time. You get it nine. I'm telling you, I've run this experiment on, I think in the last 3 years, over 200, either executives or CEOs. I didn't go even to the employee level. I guarantee you 98% will tell you, oh, well, others do what we do, and that's it. Or I don't know. And the whole thing about this book I have right here that I wrote is that is positioning. You ask people, why should people work with you? You disarm them. And that's probably the part of my job that I get to do less often, but that I love doing is positioning companies just and less often just because
Hmm.
you can only take only a few clients that take so much time to do that every year. And I wish I was able to clone myself and do positioning for a bunch more companies. But it's ironic that nobody can articulate what they do exactly or how it helps.
Yeah. And not only that, but like that's just the starting point. Okay, well, let's pick three ways you think and let's test it. Or
Yes.
let's go ask somebody. Let's run a survey. Let's do some market research, and there's such resistance because quite frankly, I don't think people want those answers because once you clarify those things, there's nowhere else to point the finger, right? You can point the finger at ambiguity. Oh, well,
Yes.
we just don't know. This is all a mystery. And it's like it doesn't have to be a mystery. Um, but I think a lot of times being able to hide behind that feels safer. When you start to just really dig into emotional drivers and your target audience, and here's the thing, what if the answer to what value do you offer is nothing?
Then you need to find something.
Then you need to
Mhm.
find something, right? Like, because the world is so oversaturated and it is a global economy. You're no longer like just looking for someone in your backyard. And if you don't have a unique, and I don't even say value proposition, I've started using the term value aspiration, right? It's bigger and it's two-way. And we also know that people don't buy products and services for what they tangibly are. 95% of the decision making happens in the subconscious brain. It is emotionally driven, and we are aspiring for that product or service to lead us and transform us into the next era of us, right? It is getting us somewhere much greater than through door A. Um, and so what is the value aspiration? Because there's one on both sides of the fence. The company has a value aspiration and it's well beyond a bottom line. What is it? Somewhere it started, right? The customer certainly has a value aspiration. And this all feels, again, okay, well, how do we make it tangible? This is the pre-strategy part. Like if you're not doing, it's like the groundwork, right? You can't build a house on sand. I mean, you could try, it's going to collapse. Like we're talking the groundwork here. And I think a lot of times, especially when you come into established companies and you start to ask these questions, I almost venture to guess they haven't answered the questions on purpose.
That's an element. For sure. I love, first of all, I love the concept of value aspiration because for people listening, think about that time you bought a car. Think about that time you bought a jacket you really wanted. It meant something to you. Even if it wasn't a famous brand, you wanted it for a reason. And the moment you bought it, you entered that new era of yourself, whatever it was, right? That's why everybody, like not everybody, that's what everybody who buys a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, buys them because
Hmm.
it's not, they will tell you, they will rationalize it. Yes, I like the craftsmanship and the mechanical prowess, whatever. It is an identity they're buying. It is
Hmm.
a milestone. And that's it. What I noticed in the last 3 years of doing positioning work for companies is that, first of all, what you say is true. There is a resistance to answering those questions. Some never think about it because the business just happened to grow organically and they just added things
Hmm.
on top of it until it became unsustainable. And the other side of it is fear, because you know that the moment I walk into that door or you walk into that door and we try to fix your positioning, you're going to have to make a choice. And you're going to have to narrow down a customer persona. And narrowing down on a one target means you are missing all the other targets. They feel like they're missing it. Instead,
Yeah.
you are focusing on something to get better results. And that's one of the that's the biggest fear that I've had to overcome with every client is, listen, narrowing down will not hurt you. And maybe we narrow down horizontally, maybe we do vertically, but you need to stop trying to be everything to everybody. It just doesn't work anymore. Maybe in the
Hmm.
70s, it doesn't work anymore.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Because we have fear. We're fear motivated. And FOMO is a real thing. We don't want to miss out. But if you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one. And even when you niche down on one particular audience, that audience is in a very different headspace in every place that they show up and interact with your brand, right? If they're on LinkedIn and they see your brand versus they're driving down the highway and they see your brand on a billboard, those are two very different headspaces.
Mhm.
Your message is not the same. The way you approach the message is not the same, or shouldn't be. The value aspiration is the same. That's your true north, right? That's that north guiding star. But you can't possibly do everything for everyone. Yes, you can add. I liked your idea of like, let's not necessarily do it horizontally. We can do it vertically. You can keep multiple things in play. Um, but if you can't do it well, don't do it at all. If you don't have the time to sit down and really understand at least one segment of your audience, then you maybe have no business having other verticals
Yes.
yet. Yeah.
Especially in a market where there is so much competition. Because
Hmm.
if you go vanilla, you will be thwarted by companies that know what they're doing, know who they're doing it for, and know why it matters. And
Yep.
those companies, they will not feel sorry for you the moment they gotta take a client from you or acquire you. They will just come in. And I'm not talking even about industry giants, right? Everybody thinks like, oh, we're gonna get taken over by the competition, or the competition is cognizant. It isn't. The
Hmm.
competition is that other mid market company that just really nailed it and narrowed down the target.
Yeah.
And they will come in front of your ideal customer and say, why are you going with them? They don't know what they're doing. And the client will go, why do you say they don't know what they're doing? They're going to go, because you don't understand what they do, right? Boom, sold into the competition and you lost millions possibly, or you lost your
Yeah.
business.
Yep. Well, I don't even think of competition as another company. I think of competition as the decision maker. It's the buyer's mind. That's where
Oh,
the competition is.
can you elaborate on that? I like that.
Yeah, so you're not competing against other companies and other brands. You're competing against your consumers' decision making. You're actually mostly competing against their subconscious brain, where 95% of that decision making is happening. Because the people who do this well, the companies who do this well, most of the time they get to a point where they're not trying to vie against you. They're amplifying their voice. They're not pushing you down. They're lifting their voice up and people come to them. They are attracted to them. Is it J. Abram? I never remember I need to commit this to memory. The person who can articulate the problem better than the person with the problem, your consumer will assume they have the solution, right?
Facts. And that's a big part of what I do in teaching sales. You need to be able to make them feel like you know their problem, you know them better than you do. And it's funny because maybe happens to you, but Most people, if you ask them, do you think you're easily manipulated or influenced? They will tell you, no, I'm not, because ego will get in the way. I will admit that I am extremely easily manipulated. And sometimes I let companies manipulate me, meaning every time Apple launches something new, I will eat up their conferences and be hyped about them lying to me about how their USB-C is an innovative solution, while I logically know that the EU pushed them and forced them to
Right.
adopt that.
Right.
But I love the brand, so I close an eye
Hmm.
and buy from them and I'm happy. But the people who say that I'm not easily influenced are more the ones that are easiest to influence because they're just not aware of these dynamics.
Hmm. Yeah, the self-awareness in all of this is huge. And that's why interesting conversation I've had with several people who want me to demonstrate to them, right, potential clients. They want me to demonstrate to them that I have a proven track record in their specific niche industry, right? I've worked across industries. What I do is very industry agnostic. And so it depending on how niche they are, odds are high. I actually probably don't have a specific case study that shows exactly what I did for someone just like you. And I got asked the other day, well, do you work in a specific industry? How do you determine who you're going to work with? And, if you turn people away, how do you decide that? I said, well, what I do is industry agnostic. However, there is a really high level of self-awareness and openness that you have to benefit from my services. And so I don't turn people away for what industry they work in or if they're B2B versus B2C, but I'll flat out let you know, I don't think this is going to work because it's going to be in constant friction if there's a lack of self-awareness. And you can figure that out pretty quickly in even a 15-minute intro call. If someone's going, if the light bulbs aren't going off and they're pushing back with resistance, there's not an openness to it. You have to be aware of, or at least open to the awareness of how pliable your brain is and how the neuroscience works in the brain, right? To be able to open up and understand somebody else's brain and how your brand can like have brain positioning.
It is. I mean, positioning happens in the mind. So yes,
Yeah.
it is a brain thing. And I love it because you're not competing against other brands. You're competing against the consumer's decision-making process. I will quote you on that forever. I never saw it that way, but it's true. And when in sales, for example, one of the issues sales reps have that they often need training on is they're not aware of this. So they're trying to push the buttons of the prospect in some other way that either ends up being manipulating or manipulative, or they don't push the right buttons because they don't ask the right questions.
Mm.
If you don't go deeper into what they're dealing with, you cannot articulate what they're dealing with. And until
Yeah.
you repeat back to them what they're suffering from in their own words, they will not open up to you or to the idea of buying from you. You need to repeat it back to them. It's where the tactical empathy thing of my SWOT thing and of like what Chris Voss talks about, because I had the book there, comes into play. You need to make the customer feel understood
Hmm.
and they'll be yours.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I wrote a piece of content earlier in the span of 1 week. I was told twice, almost verbatim. I didn't know I needed a marketing psychologist, but I do. And at the same time, I also get told all the time on 15 to 30-minute calls, man, I feel like I really know you and we just met. Do you get that a lot? And you know what it is? It's the questions.
Mhm.
I don't pitch, but I've never gotten off a 30-minute consult where someone didn't ask me what I did and how to work with me. And it's not magic, it's questions. And I would even go a little bit deeper and say, Adam Grant talks about motivation and how you can't actually motivate anyone. You can only guide them to their own motivation. And what I have found is really powerful is helping to guide people through your questions to having them realize they have their own answers.
Mhm.
They actually are unlocking it very little time do I spend giving someone a solution. Most of what I do is ask questions that help them, and they don't always have the answers on the call, right? Usually people are jotting down two or three little nuggets that they go and they really noodle on for a while. Um, but they leave feeling like they're empowered, that that knowledge lives within them. And I think that's really powerful. And if they come back and work with me, great. Here's the other side of running a business where you're recentering business around humanity. Not everything's about a client for me. If I can inspire one person to go off and think this way and then maybe impact somebody else, I know that down the road, right, those types of word of mouth referrals are fantastic. Lead with value and lead with compassion.
It comes down to people love feeling in control. And the moment
Mhm.
you ask them the right thing that makes them realize that the solution is has been always in their head, they were just too
Yeah,
busy with life to see it, is the moment they trust you. And even maybe they don't buy from you, maybe they buy from you 1 year down the line, maybe like somebody who is a friend of mine, but also I gave a lot of free advice to. He sends me consistently 2 or 3 leads a year. I don't ask. I never ask, can you refer me? He just goes, oh, you
yeah,
should talk to this person. They don't always close, but what matters is this guy sending me leads. Just because at some point I gave him some tips that costed me absolutely nothing beyond a few messages of 3 minutes.
yeah, yeah. Because you're being helpful. You're leading with value and you're leading with compassion.
Yes. And even for companies, sometimes the solution is so simple. I was talking on another show about how one thing I've noticed that was costing me deals. One question that was costing me deals because I was making it before the close, right?
Mm,
And it was people were struggling to find their positioning and their value proposition, and they thought it was this massive mystery.
mm,
And then I would go, have you tried asking your current clients, the ones you loved working with, the ones that pay you the best, that 20% of clients that gives you 80% of the results?
hmm.
Have you tried asking them why they picked you and why they stay with you? That question usually goes like blindsides people and they go, wow, I never thought about it. That's so smart. And what I do now is I still shoot it out there, even pre-sale, so that then I can implement that for them because they're still busy as hell. They're never going to do that. They're just going
Right.
to look at the call, say, oh my God, I
Yeah.
heard this genius thing. And then their CFO will call them and throw some critical thing at them and they will lose track of it.
Hmm.
But that question is a door opener because sometimes the solution is right in front of them. Just ask the people who already bought from you because what you find is that leaders are referring to think tanks. They are referring to, oh my God, the McKinsey report that says this about my target audience. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. You need to ask the target audience in person, and from that, apply to your business.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing about that, to add a little bit of applied psychology, there's an interview technique called laddering. I'm not sure if you've heard of this or not. Um, but from a psychology standpoint, right, knowing that the vast majority of the decision making happens in the subconscious, there's actually studies that show that even when directly asked, a lot of people, most people, we can't accurately articulate what it is. And so I like how you added ask them in person because, and I think that there's a dual methodology that works really well. You can run surveys. Surveys are great. They're quick, they're easy. There's so many different um, like itemized values that are statistically proven to give you a result. But laddering interviewing is really a series of going deeper, up and down, up and back, asking the same question different ways, and really getting to what they really mean. So if you have the time, right, or if you want to hire a marketing psychologist, there's value in that too, because what you'll end up seeing, I did this in my graduate research, actually. I did um, a digital survey and I did in-person interviews. And there was some, not necessarily direct conflict, but there was so much more happening when you did the hour-long interviews and you were able to see and put together what people were actually experiencing. So if you want to take it even a step further, that laddering interviewing is really interesting. And it's been used too to actually like help people with addiction and things like that. It's proven to unlock a lot of things in the brain, but interesting tactic.
I love it because what you call laddering is taught to us in hostage negotiation as one principle, which is people are really bad at telling you what they need unless you question them properly.
Hmm.
Of course, during trading, nobody told me it was called laddering, but I realized that it's this exact thing. It's the methodology of just probing the person in front of you. Of course, I apply it to a sales context, and in hostage negotiation, you apply that to life or death context. But it's the same concept. Is ask until you get to what's actually the focus point of that interaction, and it matters so much because another thing that people should keep in mind about like service is people behave differently when observed and
Hmm.
when replying to service because then they try to embody a self-image.
Yep.
And in a survey you don't have follow-ups you can ask freely to try to get them out of their own conscious brain getting in the way of what truly needs to come out.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting concept. And there's also just something about being able to build trust with people. And I use my own little take on some of this, even in my own consultations with people. And I was just on one last week. One of the people who went, "Oh my God, I didn't know I needed a marketing psychologist. I didn't know what that was before I saw you, but I need one." And what we ended up doing was she was talking to me, answering questions about her target audience and things like that. And toward the back half of the conversation, I said, just want to pause really quickly because I hear you telling me that this is your target audience when I ask the question, but the undertone throughout the whole conversation is about this group of people. And it feels like maybe that's actually your target
Oh
audience.
my God, you
And then, yeah,
labeled them. You label, okay, that's so cool.
yeah, yeah. And the light bulbs that went off, right? And they were connected audiences. And so the takeaway was like, well, actually, if you're talking to these people and you can do this over here, I think you will, on the peripheral, you're going to get these people's attention because that's kind of their target audience too. And if you can prove that you can do that, they're going to come over to you
Mhm.
effortlessly. And she got off the call and was just like, "Oh my God, that's wild." But I didn't do that. I'm just listening, right?
Yes.
I'm not listening waiting to pitch. I'm just listening and taking notes and going, "Ooh, I see some dissonance here. There's some incongruencies in what you're saying. Let's zero in."
You're making them elaborate on their own thoughts until they
Hmm.
uncover what's there. It's
Hmm.
again other hostage negotiation technique, labeling. Somebody tells you something and you label it, meaning it seems like what you're saying is, and then you say whatever it is what you that you think they're saying. The two important things is that in labeling is that first it doesn't matter if you get the label right or not. They will automatically correct you without bothering or taking it personally if it's wrong. The second thing is that you never say you just nailed it because many people say what I'm hearing is, or people say I think you're saying. The I subconsciously just shifts their focus from themselves to you. You said
Mm.
it seems like, and it keeps it still on them,
Yeah.
and that just gets them to elaborate on their thoughts, and eventually they go to the answer to give you the information that you need to have.
Yeah. Yeah, when I first started the marketing psychologist, there were a lot of people who I think joked a little bit about like, oh, I also have a nice little sofa behind me. So there was there was some jokes about like, oh, you sit me down and you talk to me about my business problems. And it's like not necessarily just that. Like there's some actual doing and some framework here. But to be honest with you, in the conversation, a lot of these things are at play, and that is the value, right? That's part of it as well. And then training people to approach things like that, because we're all people. There's nothing that changes that makes me unique and special in being able to do these things. It's taking it from these theoretical, research-backed articles, books, things you should do, and actually applying them and showing people through action how they show up and how they work. And I think that's a huge educator.
I think you'll agree with me, and you've noticed that too, either in sales calls or in client work, that your sessions tend to sound and look a lot more like therapy than they do business. It's not like people, if you say that you consult, people expect you to be running spreadsheets and running numbers. At least in my case, if you look at one of my sessions, it's me listening a lot,
Mhm.
prompting the clients, and them opening up to me. And eventually we come to a solution, but it looks more like therapy than it looks like finance.
Mhm. 100%. Because people are hungry for a safe place to be human.
Hmm.
They need that. And I think a lot of times we hide under a transactional guise. Oh, it's safer for me to like call you a consultant and pay you this money. And then, you know, it's that we're getting this exchange, this non-emotional, non-human exchange of goods or services back and forth. But really what people need is a place to show up as they are and yeah, I'm frustrated here. I'm scared here. I don't know what to do. What are we gonna like? Let's work through these things. And people will lean into that. And it tells the brain, the subconscious brain, a whole lot more than me giving you my one conversation closed script. Like, very little of communication is actual words.
Yes, and that's why I keep leaning against scripts in sales
Mm,
or in whatever. Just why do you need them unless you are starting out is your first year in sales or in any
mhm.
other discipline? Why do you need a script? It's just you're reading it and you're being robotic. It's like if I gave you questions to come here, I would be reading the questions instead of taking notes, and this thing wouldn't flow. A script is a straitjacket.
Yeah,
If you're experiencing your product, if you're an expert, and if you're experienced at least in sales, all you need is your brain, a notepad, and your ears. Sit down, sit in front of them, and focus on that person as if they were the Joe Fontana said this. Like treat them like they're the most important person in your life in that
yeah,
very moment, and it will work out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Treat them like a human. I had a post the other day that just said it was just a graphic that said be a person. And it was one it was, you know, my one takeaway after 90 days of testing whatever it was on LinkedIn. Like, just be a person.
Yes,
Just show up.
it's why you see a lot of people that push like personal branding. You have them probably in your DMs and in your requests too.
Hmm.
You take a look at their content, and it's all advice like posting times and posting schedules. It's all very robotic and pre-packaged, and you can find the same templates everywhere. Can you be a person so I can just decide if I want to buy from you, or if not, I could buy from ChatGPT. It will give me the same
Right,
template.
right. Yeah. No, I see that a lot. And I will say, like, the more that you do this, like there's a squeeze on time. What used to be 15 minutes of morning engagement and responding to comments and things like that is turned into an hour. Good problem to have. But there's a tipping point, right? Where I could see how at some point you can't necessarily, as one person, go in and respond to all those things. But there is a way to automate and scale and hold space for humanity at the same time. We live in a world where people do expect you to be using automation and AI, and that's okay in certain contexts.
Hmm.
And I think that AI is not, in my personal opinion, AI is not a new skill that you need to master. It's a soft skill. It is like emotional intelligence, it is like communication. AI is a soft skill that people need to learn how to balance and manage from a human's perspective. In order for it to be the best it can be, it needs to have humanity attached to it.
And it's it's a very slippery slope of a soft skill, meaning you don't rely on it at all, you're going to be left behind and you're going to be inefficient even if you don't get left behind.
Hmm.
Some businesses will always survive without AI, consultants in any industry. Now, if you rely on it too much, you are outsourcing your thinking, and it's happened to me. Sometimes you will use it so much, and you will start saying, "Okay, I'm relying on this thing too much. I need to go back to shutting it down and using my damn brain because these neurons need to start working." So,
Hmm.
too little AI, you're behind. Too much AI, you stop thinking for some reason. It's a it's a double-edged sword that needs to be
Yeah.
yielded like, with real care.
Hmm. Well, and to just grab onto the last part of what you said, you stop thinking, quote, for some reason, unquote. Pretty clear reason. If you're not using your brain, what happens to it?
It
If you're not
atrophies.
using the muscles, what happens to them, right?
Atrophies.
Like, and if we become too, it is a slippery slope, and I think in a lot of ways, I don't want to be doomsday, so I'm not going to go that far. But like, yeah, if you don't use your brain, atrophy, right? Use it to enhance your brain, use it to as a tool, to make you stronger and to make you better. But at what point? I think that's interesting you said that, and I'm curious, how do you notice? Like what is your t what is that tipping point when you can actually identify like, oh, I've gone too far.
I'm very good at observing my own behavior. So I notice my urges coming, right? So I know how it feels when I'm fully relying on my own skills. And then I know there was a moment last year where I had this impulse like, I would ask ChatGPT. And then I went, why do you want to ask ChatGPT? You could do this on your own. And then
Mhm.
the conscious excuse is it saves me time, which is a great way to rationalize it, right? And then I was
Mhm.
like, but maybe it's better if you don't save the time and you do this. So in that internal debate, when I feel that urge to do something that is not in my normal patterns, that's where I spot these risks.
Mm. Do you think that it was really saving time that was the reason?
No, I wasn't. At least last year, I was just doing it because it was comfortable and it was quick.
Yeah.
So it clearly wasn't. That's why the mental reframe I use to escape that is, and this is something that I think should be taught to students, but somebody who understands this better than me. But the mental reframe I used was, okay, AI is my assistant. So I
Hmm.
give it orders, it does my research. If I need to find documentation, it just scours the internet and it's really quick. And that's cool. If it needs to produce anything, it doesn't because it's not me. Like I cannot outsource thinking to an assistant because then that would affect the quality of my delivery. So anything that is related to the quality of my delivery is now done by me. Anything that accelerates the speed of the delivery is done by AI, like research. I need literature, just prompt AI.
Yeah.
I need to produce something with that literature, me.
I love that. And what a clear line in the sand to navigate back and forth. And I know that there's a lot of conversation about AI and learning and getting better and people not being able to tell the difference. I'm I'm unfortunately a sufferer of the M dash. I love the M dash. I've used the M dash for years, and now I feel like I can't use it because people think I'm AI. Whatever. There's some interesting, rather frivolous implications, I think. But there's also like I just am not convinced that that subconscious brain isn't picking up on the difference,
It is.
right? There's even if it can learn your language and your sentence structure, there's an energy behind being a human being
Mhm.
that there is not in being a language tool.
It is. And the thing is, technically, AI is nothing but a very sophisticated calculator that outputs words instead of numbers.
Hmm.
That's why it cannot be human. It doesn't understand context. It doesn't read behavior. It's very good at making you think that it's thinking just because it uses language, and that tricks some people. But it cannot be human. There is, as you said, there is an energetic element to being human. And people will say, "Oh my God, we're getting abstract." We are not. You feel it. You watch a great speaker on stage. They have energy, and you either vibe with it
Hmm.
or you don't.
Yep.
You watch an AI video made with Synthesia AI. Yes, it looks like a person. Does it feel like a person though?
Hmm.
Information. Humans are not just information.
Well, and let's talk about how humans created language, right? Language is not all encompassing. Language doesn't, I mean, there's plenty of things that we can't define with words if we want to support the whole energy thing. At the same time, I love how you were like, we think that AI is thinking because it uses words, because
Mhm.
we also use words as a defense mechanism for claiming our intelligence and our safety and our
Yes.
security. When we use language to build those walls and those veils, that's really interesting. That
Man,
might be one of my favorite takeaways so far.
if you listen to even scientists, they will tell you our modes over other creatures is we have language. So it goes without saying that AI has language, and you go, maybe the thing is smart. It isn't. Now, it's called artificial intelligence. It's branding, to be honest. It's really
Mhm.
damn smart branding that sells a lot of subscriptions and, more importantly, attracts billions in investment. So, of course, there is a vested interest in keeping this
Yeah.
narrative. It's like there was a moment, you notice this when they take it too far. There was a moment in time where Sam, um, Sam Altman, Sam Altman was walking around allegedly with a backpack with a kill switch in case it goes rogue. Every tech person in the world say that's stupid. Why? Because deep down they know that the thing is not intelligent, it's not going rogue. It's just part of the gimmick. Am I saying it's a bubble? No. Am I denying it's market changing, history changing? No. But as a matter of fact, it doesn't have a brain, it doesn't have a soul, it doesn't have energy. It's a calculator for words, so it doesn't need a kill
Hmm.
switch. It's not intelligent, even though it's called that way. Again, there is emotion imbued in the words artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then let's think about what it's using to create these calculations. Information put on the internet that is unchecked.
Mm-hmm.
I can go put information on the internet. You can. We all can. Let's not get into the whole like it's using information that flawed humans have put on the internet. Like, that's a whole nother tangent. Here we go.
I mean, if you go to some corners of the internet, the information you find is that the Earth is flat and that the moon is hollow. So, if AI was only trained on that, I assure you it wouldn't sound as intelligent as people
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Just imagine if all the training data you fed it was flat Earth theory, people would laugh at the thing.
They would. Maybe some.
Some, yes, some others would use it to just learn
Hmm.
and be more convinced of their ideas. But listen, I'll be mindful of your time. We need to do this again. I want another episode of market with the marketing psychologist because this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was great.
Um, do you have a message for people? Again, I want to emphasize your business and your mission because we
Hmm.
are on the same mission here. It's making business about people. So,
Yeah.
is is there a message you have for the audience?
I think my message would be that now is a great time, if you've ever been thinking about it, to make your business and your marketing about people. World's a crazy place. World's always a crazy place. It's always been a crazy place. It's always going to be a crazy place. But there's real impact that can be made in every action that you take. And owning a business or making business decisions is a really influential place to be. And especially if you're looking for something more than just your standard return on investment, now's a great time to work with people like me, people like you, and there's so many more out there. who really want to add humanity back into business, back into their practices. So that's what I would leave you with. If that sounds good to you, if that's something that's resonating, I always offer free calls. You can go to my LinkedIn, to my website, and book a call with me at any time. And I would love to just chat.
Perfect. Listen, people, trust me, you have two experts here of a quite high level, I must say. Like, not humbly, of course, because not my shtick, but two experts are telling you and guaranteeing you that in doing human business, there is a bigger ROI than in just treating people like meat sacks. So just give it a try. You might end up getting with like, a 10-year customer lifetime value, and you might be surprised that, I don't know, you can have a successful exit. You can live a fulfilled life and you can change lives with your business. Or you
Mhm.
can, if you're into money, caring about humans also makes money. As one of my clients says, it's good money to do good. And that will always stick with me.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Right? Shout out to her. She's great. And Emily, by the way, shout out to her. And Chelsea, it was great having you on. I hope I'll have you on another episode, and I wish you an amazing day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the time.
My pleasure, people. This was the Tech of Tomorrow podcast with Sebastian Hidalgo. I am Sebastian Hidalgo. Please follow, subscribe, comment, and all the usual housekeeping notes because I'm really unhappy with the YouTube channel being that small. So make me happy. Only takes one click, and I will see you next week in the next episode.